Hey everyone, I'm Brad and this is Watch Rate Heart, and it's Friday, which means it's time for the watch list. It's where I discuss the films I've watched and my feelings about them. And this week, in celebration of St. Patrick's Day, I thought what better time it is than now than to watch some films that are set in Ireland or based around Irish people. I've got 4 films, one that is a very little seen documentary, so let's review these films that showcases these colorful personalities in this wondrous country. Let's start with the family-friendly drama from John Sayles, The Secret of Roan Inish. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.7 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.4 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes of 95% fresh, and Metacritic of 80. It has no accolades to speak of at this time. Okay, so The Secret of Roan Inish. I just watched something from John Sayles a couple weeks ago in Lone Star and really liked the film, so I was kind of looking forward to this. The film's fine. I think it's overall a good movie that I'd recommend. I really think the best parts of the film are when it sticks with the fantasy elements. I gotta be honest with you, when it stuck with the little girl and her family and the little drama in between that, I got kind of bored. But the fantasy elements of the film, dealing with the Selkies and the story about little Jimmy, I think actually was the more interesting parts of the film. I also really like the music. I think it's lovely. It's really nice to listen to. I mentioned that this film got boring for me. It's because the second act really drags. I was bored through a good portion of it. Like I said, it's only when the fantasy parts and how they're shot is where I think the film is best, but when it sticks to the little girl and her family and the town that she's in, I feel like it's just kind of dull and not all that interesting. By the third act, that story does get a little bit interesting, but overall, it just felt a little too slow, a little too talky for me. And even though that stuff did kind of bore me, I still think the film had a really good ending. But even though I think the family stuff was a little bit boring, I think how they melded everything together in the ending was actually very good. It was surprisingly more emotional than I was really expecting, even though I think through half the film I kind of wasn't really vibing with it. But by the end of the film, I ended up pretty much enjoying it and enjoying it for its fantasy trappings. So overall, I'm going to give The Secret of Roan Inish 3 stars out of 5. It's a lovely film. I definitely like the fantasy elements of it the most. The music's just lovely. I actually really like the musical score of the film. My one big problem is in the first 2 acts when it doesn't deal with any of the fantasy parts. It's boring. It's just not an interesting film at all. I think the film is a little too talkative for the story it's trying to tell. But even with that problem, I think the ending actually is really nice, and I felt a little emotional after watching it. So this is a very lovely film, but not a great film overall. So overall, 3 stars out of 5 for me for The Secret of Roan Inish. Now, with every episode of Watch Rate Heart, I not only give you my opinion on films, I also give the opinions of the Letterboxd community. This first one is from Josh Larson. Josh gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Josh says, working with legendary cinematographer Haskell Wexler, Sayles applies a veneer of fantasy to the story sequences, including an image of a Selkie shedding its skin, but my favorite moments are the magical realist one. A shot of Fiona's brother, now a chunky toddler, floating atop the sea in his cradle. A misty boat ride Fiona takes from her village to Roan Inish, accompanied by watching seals. These straddle that line between what's real and what's imagined, the place where movie magic is often made. And he's got a full review on his website. It is the fantasy stuff in the film that I think really I responded to it more, and I felt it was really good. The magical realist stuff happens, I believe, more in the third act. And I think that's what makes that family story much more interesting, is when it starts to get into that magical realist stuff. So I do agree with Josh overall. I just wish there was more of that throughout the entire film. But I will definitely agree that the cinematography is actually really well done in this. This next review is from Chevelle. Chevelle gives it 3 stars out of 5, and Chevelle says, at times wispy, at times over-talky, absolutely. The Secret of Roan Inish happens to be an Irish fairy tale that at its best floats by on pleasant vibes. Possibly the prettiest of all John Sayles movies. It caught my eye's interest the most when it tapers golden hues over that lush green land and ocean shore. 10-year-old Fiona sets forth to search for her long-lost brother in the sea, learns of the Selkie, the half-seal, half-human creature, and lots of buoyant Irish pipes on the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack. I think the soundtrack is probably the best thing about this movie. This next review is from Zara. Zara gives it 3 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Zara says, imagine seeing a woman literally emerge from the hide of a seal, covered in ooze and slime and whatever, and thinking, yeah, I'm gonna bone her. That was exactly what I was thinking. It's like, man, you didn't question that at all, dude? But okay, sure. And this last review is from Anna Cam. Anna Cam gives it 3.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Anna says, a quiet, magical little film. And yeah, that's basically the best thing to call The Secret of Roan Inish. It's a magical film that is very quiet, but it has a lot of whimsy to it. I just wonder if kids will actually get into this. That's my biggest issue that I have right now thinking about this. It's just one of those films like where back in the day, it just feels like filmmakers would take chances with kids' entertainment. And we'll do a quiet, or we'll do a distressing, or we'll do a film that makes them think a little. And they just don't do that anymore, really. The Secret of Roan Inish is a reminder of what we once had. So in review, The Secret of Roan Inish is a better film when it sticks to its fantasy elements, and the music of the film is just beautiful. And even though I did like the ending of the film, I felt like the first 2 acts really dragged when it did not deal with the fantastical elements. But what I will say is if you want to give your child something that's a little more thoughtful and a little more imaginative, I would say The Secret of Roan Inish is not a bad movie to give it a shot. I could see some people actually loving this film, but overall, I did think it was good, but not as good as I think others do. Continuing on with more films about the Irish, let's review a documentary about one of the most beloved institutions of Ireland. And the film is The Irish Pub, directed by Alex Fegan. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.5 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.4 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes of 100% fresh. Mind you, there is 6 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and it does not have a Metacritic score. It also has no accolades as of right now. So there's not really much to say about The Irish Pub. What I will say is that it does show some interesting bars and people in the film. There's some really nice looking bars. I really like the architecture and how it showed it in a good amount of detail. That's really all the film is. Honestly, there's really not much to say. All this film is basically going to a bunch of Irish pubs, taking a look at them, talking to an owner or a person who works there or a patron, and telling them what they think about Irish pubs and their importance, and that's about it. I really wish there was more to it than that. I mean, for what it is, it's fine, but I just wish there was more. I wish there was more about, like, the history of the Irish pub, the importance of the Irish pub in a historical context, in a way. This film doesn't have that. It does show some generational ownership and stuff, and how it's passed down from father to son to daughter, whatever. But that's really all there is. I'll say this. From someone who doesn't like going to bars, doesn't like drinking, this film did not really interest me all that much. So I guess if you are someone who is nostalgic or likes the atmosphere of a bar or likes alcohol and has a wistfulness and nostalgia for it, I think you might like it. But for me, I thought it was fine for what it was, but I think it was sorely lacking in things I would have liked to have seen and liked to have known about the importance of Irish pubs. So overall, I'm going to give The Irish Pub 2.5 stars out of 5. Clearly, this movie's not for me. I will say that right off the bat, but I will say that the pubs they showed and the people that they were showcasing were interesting and were neat to see. I just wanted a lot more from it than I really got. So overall, 2.5 stars out of 5 for me for The Irish Pub. Now, I'm going to get to Letterboxd reviews, but I went through my friends list, and apparently nobody in my friends list watched this film, so I had to go right into popular reviews. So let's get the first review from Bill Shannon. Bill gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Bill says, the pubs explored here and the history behind them give me an aching sense of nostalgia and envy that I am not posted up in one right now. Yeah, see, I think that is the key to this movie here, is that if you are nostalgic for it, or if you like the atmosphere of a pub or a bar, I think that you'll get a lot more out of it than really I did. This next review is from the Ong Joon-ho. The Ong Joon-ho gives it 3.5 stars out of 5, and the Ong Joon-ho says, I'd love to visit every pub in Ireland and ask for an ice-cold Miller Lite. Other than that, vibes couldn't be better in these joints. Would they kick you out for ordering a Miller Lite there? I kind of feel like they would. I think it would have to be a Guinness, wouldn't it? I really think they would kick you out, but maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. What do I know? I don't go to bars. This next review is from Giant13. Giant13 gives it 2.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Giant says, stories from publicans from Ireland about their pubs and patrons, including some background on the significance of the Irish pub. No narrator, just local labels and people from that pub talking about the good old days through a series of mini vignettes. As a documentary, it's kind of bland, unfortunately. I absolutely agree with that. Time spent well, but I'd prefer something more informative. I agree with that, absolutely. If you're a hibernophile, this is certainly for you. And yes, subtitles are necessary, otherwise you don't know what the hell they're saying. I didn't have that much of a problem with most of it. There were some where I was like, For the most part, I was fine. And this last review is from Finian. Finian does not give it a rating, and Finian just states, subtitles on. Like I said, I watched it with no subtitles, and I was pretty good. Again, a few of them were kind of dodgy, but I was completely fine. Not like with Kess. Kess was like the only movie that I watched that was technically in English that I needed subtitles with, because I could not understand a word they were saying. I mean, there's not much to say about the Irish pub, like I said. It's got some really interesting bars to showcase and some really interesting people to talk to. But really, that's all there is to it. And I think if you are more nostalgic or you have warm feelings with bars and alcohol and stuff like that, I'll think you get more out of it. But honestly, not for me. But I'm not going to denigrate it. I'll just say it's just not for me.
There is to know about the crying game.
Next, let's review one of the most talked about films of the 90s, The Crying Game, starring Stephen Rea, Miranda Richardson, and Forrest Whitaker, written and directed by Neil Jordan. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.6 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.2 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes of 95% fresh, and a Metacritic of 90. As for accolades, it won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars for Neil Jordan, and was nominated for 4 other Oscars for Best Picture, Best Actor for Stephen Rea, Best Supporting Actor for Jay Davidson, Best Director, and Best Film Editing. And it's featured in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. I often get annoyed by people who take today's perspectives and pretty much force it onto the film that they're watching and criticize it because it doesn't match that perspective. I often get annoyed by it. I call it out a lot on social media and to people who do it. And I'm saying this because I think I'm about to do that myself. There's 2 things about The Crying Game that I'm going to criticize it for, and I think it's kind of unfair for me to criticize it on these grounds. One is the twist. I already knew the twist coming in. It's mainly because it was so ubiquitous and well-known in the 90s that you kind of couldn't escape it, even if you've never watched or never heard of the movie. This twist has been referenced in other movies. It's been referenced in books. It's been referenced in articles as some of the best twists of all time. So I already knew the twist going in. So I was never going to be surprised by it. I knew walking in what it was. I guess the thing is, like, the twist didn't work with me, and I think it was more to do with the fact that I knew what the twist was, and I wasn't really shocked by it than anything else. I think the other issue as well is that when I saw Dill in the movie for the first time, it was in the photo, I immediately was like, that's definitely a trans woman. I can get in the 90s where people would not know what a trans woman is, but immediately I was like, that's a trans woman. That's a trans woman. So that twist, even if I did not know it at all, I would have been like, And again, that's me looking at it in today's eyes. I can suss that out a lot better than maybe I could have in the 90s. Of course, around the time this film was made and released, I was 10. So I don't know if I could have actually done it back then either because of my age. I want to say, I think the performances by Stephen Rea and especially Jay Davidson is very good. I really like Jay Davidson in the film. I think that Jay Davidson played the character of Dill very sensitively and very well. I know there are criticisms of this character and of the performance, but I think it's actually pretty well done, so I kind of have to disagree with that. And in various scenes, I think the film is shot well. I want to point out with the twist, I think the way that they shot the Metro, the bar in the film, was actually pretty clever. Before the twist, it's shot in like a smoky, kind of glowy way to make it look dreamlike, and there's a reason why, and it's because the twist really is the movie, and I think it was to obscure what was actually going on in the movie, because it's trying to hide the fact that it's a gay bar, so, essentially. So I'm talking about the twist a lot in the movie, because the beginning and the end of the film just seems to be forced and kind of tacked on in a way. So if you don't know, the movie is not just about this guy who falls falls in love with this girl. It's about this soldier in the IRA who is trying to hide away from the IRA itself. The film just forgets about it in the second act, like completely. I think by the time the middle of the third act comes, then the IRA is back. And the way they reintroduce them is just really sloppy and just does not work at all. Like the thriller aspects of the film just didn't land for me all that much. I wouldn't say it's boring, but I just think it's kind of sloppy how they actually implemented everything. Overall, I'm going to give The Crying Game 2.5 out of 5. And I feel kind of bad for giving this kind of rating because I feel like I couldn't give it a fair shake. Because I feel like I am looking at it at today's eyes, even though I knew the twist going in, I knew what I was walking into, and I wasn't exactly shocked. So it's got several things in my viewing experience it has going against it, and I feel like it's kind of unfair. I do like the performances by Stephen Ray and Jay Davidson. I thought they were very good. I like the way the film is shot in certain sequences and certain scenes, but honestly, the thriller aspect of the film, I think, is tacked on. It really feels sloppy how it's implemented. It's basically implemented in the first act and then the tail end of the third act, and it just seems forced by the end of the film. Overall, 2.5 stars out of 5 for me for The Crying Game. I really feel like I can't give it a fair shake. And not just because I'm offended by something, which I'm really not. It's just because I can't help but look at it in the eyes of today and go, I don't buy any of this. So I don't know how else to rate this. So let's get into Letterboxd reviews. This one is from KYK. KYK gives it 3 stars out of 5 with a heart, and KYK says, not this cis white woman with huge Miss Monopoly energy being the poster. Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird because this character not only is not in the film all that much, but the way that she looks is only in the last 10 minutes of the damn movie. But I will say that she is probably in the poster because they want to keep the twist a twist. I don't know. I do find it to be a bit weird, but I also kind of see why they did it that way. This next review is from Alan. Alan gives it 4 stars out of 5, and Alan says, I did not see that twist coming. Really, Alan? I mean, who would have thought this was a cricket movie? You just spoiled it, Alan. God damn it. Oh, that's good. All right, so let's get into this next review. This one is from Robert. Robert gives it 1 star out of 5, and Robert says, first time seeing this, but going in, I was aware that there was some sort of amazing twist. This movie is famous for that. Didn't know what it was, though. Really, Robert? You didn't know what it was? That's crazy. Okay, anyway, that was not what I expected. Wouldn't watch it again. It's not like The Usual Suspects where you could rewatch and find clues or something. I suppose the shocking reveal was a big deal for the 90s, but ultimately, I thought this movie stunk. I think it was a really shocking reveal in the 90s. I think that's what made this film so popular at the time. Nominated for 6 Oscars? What are we doing here? Movies like this annoy me when they have such thick British-Irish accents. It's hard to distinguish what is being said. I don't know why I have no problem with the accents. Some people do, some people don't. But yeah, Robert really does not like this film. And finally, this last review is from Sammy Dog. Sammy Dog gives it 2 stars out of 5, and Sammy Dog says, maybe watching this in 2024 was the issue, but was that really a surprise for people in 1992? I feel the same exact way, Sammy, and I think, yes, it was. I think that was a really big surprise. It was quite obvious to me, and I basically went in blind, aside from remembering Chris Tucker's line referencing this film from Rush Hour 3. And I think that's kind of the point I had, because I think if the big thing that makes this movie run is the twist, and the twist is so well known that I think it's going to hurt the film later on in the end, I think that's the exact problem I had. I'm not sure if that's exactly what Sammy is saying. I think the reason why I kind of went meh on it is because I kind of knew the twist going in. So yeah, in review, I think the performances by Ray and Davidson are actually very good, especially Davidson in the film. I think various scenes are shot fairly well, especially the sudden mask-off sequence in the bar that I thought was very well done. But man, the twist isn't all that shocking to me at all, and I might be looking at today's eyes, and that might be why. And I think that the whole IRA plotline of the film, the portion of the film that involves the IRA, just feels tacked on and sloppy by the end. But again, I will say this, I'm giving it 2.5 stars out of 5, even though I kind of feel like I can't rate it all that fairly, because I already knew the big thing going in about it. But then again, if the twist is really all you have to make it interesting, then that's kind of a problem with the screenplay, which is kind of weird that this won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars that year. I'm very mixed on The Crying Game.
How could I leave Belfast?
I wouldn't worry about it. The Irish were born for leaving. Otherwise, the rest of the world would have no pubs.
Finally, we have the family drama from 2021, Belfast, starring Jamie Dornan, Judi Dench, and Ciarán Hinds, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Has a Letterboxd score of 3.5 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.2 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes of 86% fresh, and a Metacritic of 75. As for accolades, it won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars for Kenneth Branagh, and it was nominated for Best Picture, Supporting Actor for Ciarán Hinds, Supporting Actress for Judi Dench, Best Director, Best Sound, and Best Song. So I came away from Belfast pretty underwhelmed. I think this is a nice family drama, but it's really not all that deep. In fact, it's not deep in the slightest. You can basically say the film is about a family that needs to decide to move or not. That's it. That's all the movie really is about. And you can take all the background drama that's in there and envelope itself into it, but really there's not much that the film does with all of that. All it is basically these kids live in Belfast, parents have to decide whether they're going to move or not. That's it. That's all the movie is. And, sometimes it's not really a problem. That could work in some movies. I don't think it's enough in this film, though. But I will say that the music choices that they made in the film are very good. But it doesn't really fit right with the movie. I think I'm only liking the music because I like the music, essentially, and that's it. Like, it really doesn't evoke any kind of feeling to me in the film as I am watching it. And I think that when you make those decisions, you hope for those feelings to come up, and it didn't for me, and that's kind of a problem. The other issue that I have are the visuals. The visuals are nice. No, they're nice. The visuals are nice. But the problem is they don't provide anything other than an aesthetic choice. I would believe the reason why Kenneth Branagh would use black and white in this movie is for a specific purpose. And from what I've read, it was just for nostalgia. Okay, fine, you can do that. But to me, I don't think it really works all that well, especially when Kenneth Branagh starts to sprinkle in color here and there throughout the film. At that point, I'm like, well, why bother? Why bother with the black and white at this point if you're going to put all this color in there? And it just feels like either or is kind of meaningless in the sense. I think in one scene where the family sees a play and it's in color, then I can kind of understand that. But then you see movies that are in color, then you see background shots that are in color, and then it goes right back to black and white when you're in that town. And I'm sitting here going, why? Why even do this? Honestly, I didn't find a reason as to why it needed to be black and white. I think really the film relies on nostalgia a lot to carry it. And honestly, for me, it didn't work. You're going to find with some of the reviews that it did with some. And with the rating that it has on Letterboxd, some people were really affected by the film. I was one who sat there going, is something interesting going to happen? Is something going on that's deeper than what is being shown? And the answer, honestly, at the end was no. It wasn't. And with that, it would rely on the story to be good. And the story is fine, but it's not interesting, it's not deep, they're not saying something deeper involved in the film. It's just a straight story, and the aesthetics and musical choices don't do anything to prop up the rest of the story. It just is black and white to be black and white, and it's just a family story to be family story, and that's it. Honestly, I was pretty disappointed by the movie. Was I bored at all? Not really. But then as I was watching, I kept questioning, why do it this way? Why do it that way? And for the life of me, I can't figure it out. So overall, I'm going to give Belfast 2 stars out of 5. If you just want to get with the story is fine. It's just not a deep story. It's just a straight story about a family deciding to move. And that's fine. And the music is good, even though I don't think it really fits well with the rest of the film. But what I really don't understand is why it's in black and white, especially when they start to sprinkle color here and there into the film, because I don't think the black and white really provides anything other than an aesthetic choice. But sometimes an aesthetic choice can actually help enhance the film, which I don't think Belfast does very well in this. And the film just relies too much on nostalgia for it to take it to the finish line, and I don't think it does very well. So overall, 2 stars out of 5 for me for Belfast. Let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. This one is from Silent Dawn. Silent Dawn gives it 1.5 stars out of 5, and Silent Dawn says, Kenneth Branagh tries his hand at social realism and ends up with a movie that's all about a family that eavesdrops on each other. Yeah, essentially. This doesn't feel any different from the trailer, in all honesty. You can watch that instead, and you seriously won't miss a thing. Ernest fluff that, thanks to the baffling ending and flat black and white images, got on my nerves very quickly. I couldn't say that the images really got on my nerves. I just was kind of sitting there going, why? Like, why? I don't understand. As for the ending, I didn't feel either way with the ending. I actually bought this cheap on Apple, and I got to see the extras in this film, and it came with the deleted ending that they had in this, and the ending that they did not use would have probably pissed you off even more, Silent Dawn, to be absolutely honest, because it was so on the nose in the end. But what I will say with Silent Dawn, I actually watched the trailer for this right after I saw this comment, and he's right. You're not missing much. This next review is from Matt Lynch. Matt Lynch gives it 2.5 stars out of 5, and Matt Lynch says, kind of a lightweight Roma knockoff, but then again, I didn't like Roma too much either. Wow. Actually, that's a really good point. Not even just with the aesthetics, but what the film was trying to do. Like the social change, the use of violence. Man, oh my God. The father who's not there. The mother who's the... Oh my God, he's absolutely right. It is a Roma knockoff. Wow. That's crazy. Good one on you, Matt Lynch. This next review is from Zoe Rose Bryant. Zoe gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Zoe says, Belfast is cinema at its most magical and moving. A compassionate ode to childhood, bursting at the seams with sincere reverence for the familial relationships that form the foundation of our lives. Jude Hill is a joy, Jamie Dornan is dashing, and Katarina Balfe is beyond beguiling. I do like her in this film, and I anticipate major awards attention will follow for the latter two. It didn't, unfortunately. And full thoughts are on her site for loud and clear reviews. You know, she's not the only person who's said this on Letterboxd. Like I said, there are positive reviews that really love this film, and I just found the film empty. And finally, this review is from Matthias Larson. Matthias gives it 3.5 stars out of 5, and Matthias says, very nuanced, love how the family and community is cleverly used to show different viewpoints on the conflict and just regular day life for the time period. Within the 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio and the amazing camera work, it's by far one of the most visually pleasing movies from this year as well. It looks great. I guess. It's like, I don't agree, but it's not a bad looking film, but I'm not too impressed with the visuals. Anyway, while there's much to praise, I didn't really feel engaged. There's something off that I just can't put my finger on. Maybe it's the child acting and that it feels very empty, and some of the more tense scenes wasn't that tense. Still a good movie. Yeah, like at the end, there's a big scene that involves like a riot, and I didn't feel anything with that either. So I see what Matthias Larson is talking about there. So in review, Belfast is a nice family drama with really no depth at all to it. It does have good music, but it relies on the black and white visuals to carry the movie forward. It just doesn't, because it just feels like an aesthetic choice to be an aesthetic choice. And that just leaves the nostalgia for the film to be carried forward. And for me, it just didn't work. It's a disappointing film, especially since it got so many award nominations the year it came out. And I've heard good things about it. But overall, I do feel very underwhelmed with Belfast. Now let's recap the films I reviewed in today's episode. I gave 2.5 stars out of 5 for The Irish Pub. It's a small documentary about different pubs and bars in Ireland. I feel like that if you're going to enjoy it, you want to be interested in pubs and drinking, which I am not. I gave 2.5 stars out of 5 for The Crying Game. I did like the performances of Stephen Ray and Jay Davidson, especially Jay Davidson in this film, and I think some scenes are shot very well. But honestly, the twist wasn't all that shocking, even though I did know what it was before then. And everything involved in the IRA just felt kind of tacked on and sloppy when it was executed. I gave 2 stars out of 5 for Belfast, a movie that's a nice family drama, but just not really that deep, and relies on the audio and the visuals to carry the film through just with nostalgia, and it just did not do it for me. And my film of the week is The Secret of Roan Inish, directed by John Sayles. The best elements of the film are its fantasy plot, and the music is just lovely in the film. I definitely like the music in this one, but the film kind of drags in the second half, even though it hits with a very satisfying ending. This is definitely a family film that I would definitely recommend for people if you want to watch something with your kids for St. Patrick's Day, but I don't think you're going to be wowed by it, but it's a nice film overall. And that is it for this episode of Watch Rate Heart. But before I go, let me ask you a question. What other Irish films should I watch next year? I mean, I'm trying to find some more, and I'm kind of hitting some blanks here. I think one of them will be Wolfwalkers, which is from Cartoon Saloon, the Irish animation studio. I really liked their last few films, and I really wanted to watch Bloody Sunday from Paul Greengrass this year, but I can't find it anywhere streaming, so I had a hard time with there. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments section below. If you liked any of the reviewers I've highlighted in this episode, you can check out the video description for a link to their Letterboxd profile. Be sure to give them a follow and let them know that Brad from Watch Rate Heart sent you. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at Watch Rate Heart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch Rate Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.